Okay, thank you. Our topic today is the evaluation plan. This is part of our 5-year plan development training series. Just so you all know, the information in this, the instruction, there's one instruction and there is some guidance. All of that has been updated by ACL staff, and it will be the same instruction and guidance that you should see on your template. So we know that this doesn't exactly match what's in the older template, but it's supposed to be simpler. So we're going to talk about the instructions. We're going to talk about the guidance to supplement the instruction. What we've done this time is just giving you some weak and strong examples for each one of the elements. And then we wanted to let you know that there is an additional big O resource coming from PFH. They've developed a practical guide to developing an evaluation plan, and it's tailored for DD councils. But it has not made it all the way through ACL clearance. And so you will see it. It will be available to you. And then you'll have an opportunity to hear from Michelle Muncy on how to use it. But PFH is Partnerships for Health. They are our ITAC evaluation consultant group. Some of you older folks or folks who have been here a few years may remember this was something that was required by ACL for our contract for the last 5 years. So evaluation has been a strong focus point for the administration, and you all have risen to the level. So I'm excited to bring you a simpler, kinder, gentler version of the evaluation plan section. So there is one instruction, and here it is. You are to describe how your council will monitor progress on your goals and objectives, how you will review your activities to understand how well they're working, and then you'll describe how you will use evaluation results to understand results beyond the required performance measures. And I've put a little note. When you see the instructions say the council, sometimes it's really, sometimes we take it literally and you think the council does this. I'm going to tell you, this is the broader council. So the council does refer to council staff and council members, because you all know that council members don't really do the day-to-day operational work. They do the governance work. So you'll see how this fleshes out. So this is the one big instruction. So now let's move into the piece on trying to really understand this instruction and what 4 big things the feds are looking for you all to address in your work, in your evaluation plan. So the first element, you'll see some guidance to describe how council staff and members will look at outcomes and key results for each objective. This might, include any benchmarks or milestones. And just so you all know, and I always have to look it up, so don't feel like you don't know something. Benchmarks are really your performance targets, what you're really going after. Milestones are really those key implementation activities. Or other measures that your council may want to develop to show progress over time. So you're looking at this now and you're saying, oh my gosh, how am I going to put that in a sentence? Well, let's look at a sentence, okay? I hope. Look, I got you an example. All right, now look, I'm starting off with the negative. I know that's not a good presentation strategy, but we're going to come out with the weak example and then we're going to give you the strong example. So simply just saying you're going to monitor some activities and review some reports, that's not going to be good enough. Okay. Just making a statement. We're going to discuss it during council meetings. Let's just be a little bit more detailed here so that there is a pretty good understanding of what you're going to do. So you may want to include things like, you know what we're going to do? Staff is going to define short-term, intermediate, and long-term outcomes. That's going to really describe what we're trying to change. You know, or what, however you want to phrase it. You may want to describe what does a short-term outcome include. So we're kind of giving you this example. It might be increased knowledge, increased engagement, increase in leadership skills. Then you may want to say an intermediate outcome may present itself as, and here's an example of increased decision-making roles, improved policies and practices. And then your long-term outcomes is like, what can you sustain? Systems change, sustainable systems change, increased inclusion, enhanced self-determination. And then you can make a statement about, okay, we will know progress has been achieved by using our performance indicators, our annual benchmarks. So you do want to try and give the reviewers a sense of how you're going to really measure outcomes. And one of the things that you want to try to keep your mind on is looking at outcomes, what really happens for people, families, systems, rather than just the activity of viewing a report. Staff is going to monitor a project, or we're going to discuss something at a council meeting. Those are activities, and although they're important, try to layer on what the focus, what the outcome of those activities would be. Oh, hey, Brooke. Yeah, well, it is. Just look at our examples and try to, you know, you can connect the dots there. Some of this does, then support and connect to DD Act principles. It shows that you can demonstrate your ability to measure progress, which is really ultimately what the federal reviewers, your federal staff want to see, is that you have a plan that is going to enable you at the staff level and council level to see progress. Okay, so then we had another element in this first one that was talking about key results and benchmarks. Um, and so, you could make a statement like, yeah, we're going to count the number of trainings we did and the number of people. But to determine progress on what? So here's some suggestions. When you just track numbers, that is really outputs. And again, we want to make a distinction between outputs and outcomes. And so you really want to show that you have a way to measure your objectives on the outcomes. And I know that participation and reach is a real big deal because we do want councils to be able to show the number of people. Obviously, it's important because it's in your performance measures, but you may want to, layer in some other information. So you're going to be tracking outputs, of course, But you also want to reinforce that you're going to measure changes in knowledge or changes in the capacity to lead or changes in the uh, people engaging in policy and systems change activities. So, feel free to, you don't have to be super wordy. You can be concise, but still get your point across. And of course, if these annual benchmarks that remember, and you do this in your annual work plan. And so, you could rephrase this to say annual performance targets are established for each key activity. Well, that's built in, so you can say that. But you can also go outside of the performance measures. So, you might set a very specific targets if you want. If you want to include that, that's fine. But if you have some benchmarks, and especially on these performance measures, that you can say, this will allow us to assess progress over time. And then if we need to make an adjustment, we can do that. This really does kind of explain to the feds that you're not just filling out the annual work plan for the sake of filling it out. You're really using it to then establish some of your benchmarks so that you can measure progress. The next one is really going beyond the required measures. So you could simply say, yeah, we're going to collect the required performance measures and report. Well, we're going to suggest you do a little bit more. You really, again, we've got this focus on impact. So you really do want to say, we really want to conduct broader evaluation activities. We want to assess our longer term impact, our policy influence. You can say that this is part of your review. This is where you get that opportunity, how we ask about stories, all of the qualitative, the experiences people have, all of the feedback, to really understand this is going beyond the required measures. When you ask for a story, you are now going beyond. So, you're trying to really demonstrate that you want to keep your finger on the pulse of meaningful change beyond what is required for compliance. And so, these are some examples to get you there. It also does show that you've got a commitment to systems change when you're following it all the way through. No, Tedra, you're so funny. Are you getting an increase in funding? Well, we just need to put a period right there. You know the answer to that. Okay, element 2, explain how your evaluation activities will be accessible and understandable for all participants, and how feedback from individuals with developmental disabilities, family members, and others will be included. Now, they are looking specifically for you to answer this question. So, of course, we've given you an example. Okay, we're going to suggest you don't do the weak example. We're going to gather feedback from people as needed. So let's give them some kind of meat to go with this. You're going to, things like, we're going to make sure that we write our stuff in plain language. We're going to make sure our materials are available in alternate formats, and language access is going to be provided as needed. You're going to actively gather information from people with developmental disabilities, family members, self-advocates, community partners, and other populations. I mean, you can put anybody you want in there. Then tell them how you're going to do that. Surveys, listening sessions, focus group, advisory committee input. And then don't forget to wrap it up with, are you going to look at any of that? Because, you really do want to review the stakeholder or the participant feedback regularly. And then, you can even strengthen it a little bit more, incorporate that into strategic decision making and project improvements. That absolutely shows that you are going to use the data that you are asking people to provide. And this is really, if you can name the people you're going to involve in your evaluation, um, you want to address how accessible your stuff is. And then that you've got some structure to your feedback process. Brooke?
Sorry, still muted. Um, so I get that, making sure like our evaluations activities are accessible. So like, we get input, do surveys, do all those focus groups. I think that piece I get, but like when you're saying share that feedback, or are we supposed to share everything that we get to people outside of our council on a regular basis?
No, I would say you want to. So, most of the time, council staff review that feedback. If
Right.
there are any concerns with your grantees, of course, you would want to share back with them. Like if they're not doing enough or you're not getting really good evaluation results, it's a perfect opportunity for you all to provide some technical assistance to your grantees about ways they can improve feedback on their projects or activity. But I think ultimately you want to be able, if your council members are interested in what are people saying about, are they happy with our newest project or this pilot project we're doing, or you can share it with them. But I wouldn't think you would make this widely available to the world. I think it has specific uses here. Does that help?
Yeah, I mean, like we do an annual magazine every year, but we're only putting the positive stuff in that. We're not
Oh
putting
yeah, yeah.
the
No, that's
negative
what you want to do. Yeah,
stuff.
yeah. Your forward facing stuff. Absolutely. But I think if you have some things that are less than positive, that is when then it gets incorporated into your strategic decision making and project improvements. And so that's really an internal process more than, kind of the public facing stuff. Okay, our third element is about the need for you all to describe how council staff and members will decide whether strategies are effective. How council staff and members will regularly review and discuss progress, and how the evaluation results will be used to guide decisions and improvements. So, when you're reviewing effectiveness, this really is staff level, right? And so most of the time, you all are doing, you're kind of looking at things project by project, which then speaks back to your objectives. And of course, a lot of you, I don't know if every one of you, have a report that you are providing to your council, or maybe you have a state plan committee that really reviews project progress, that kind of thing. But, you can say things like, if this is part of your process, again, these are just examples. You really need to have a working process, but you're really trying to say to the feds, we have an established process to review projects quarterly. We look at what we expected them to achieve with what they're actually achieving. We look for trends and patterns and data. We look to see what barriers that they're experiencing. We're looking to see what progress they're making on systems change and what kind of evidence we have towards that. And then, if we're seeing something that is unintended or maybe is less than what we expected, the council or the council committee or staff may work with grantees to provide some technical assistance, revise timelines, adjust strategies. You can say whatever you want there. Again, the idea here is not to be super wordy. You can see how short these statements are, but it clearly gets your message across. But it's really are our strategies effective? Is what we're doing effective? Do you have a plan? Do you have a process to even address that? So you're trying to describe a structured process here. You want to really show that you're using data to inform your review of strategy effectiveness. We would encourage you to include something on a corrective action process with a grantee or a project. Again, technical assistance, revisions to timelines, modification to strategies. You can put what you want. And then really trying to demonstrate that you all are engaging in active oversight of your investments with the federal dollar. That's what you're trying to convey here, while showing that you're keeping your eye on how effective is this work that's happening. Okay, our last element. Now, this one is, I should have gone back and looked at the last one, but you are to describe how council staff and members will review progress on self-advocacy, and it reads like this: self-advocacy goals. Think of this as the self-advocacy goal, corresponding objectives. It's the 3 required self-advocacy elements. And how you're going to gather and use feedback to understand satisfaction with your council-funded projects. So now our examples are, again, you want to not just make a statement, we're going to support self-advocacy and ask people if they're happy with it. Doesn't speak to what they are looking for. Really, any objective related to, or a goal or an objective related to self-advocacy, try to include some things like, we're going to track measurable indicators like increased participation in policymaking or policy and advocacy, increase participation on boards and committees, increase engagement in advocacy efforts, leadership skill development. That gives a signal that you are, and those correspond, most of them, some of them don't, correspond back to the performance measures. But you also want to speak to that, you're going to assess satisfaction, how you're going to do that. Are you going to do surveys? Are you going to, again, how do you know people are satisfied with what it is you're doing? Can be a simple 1-sentence statement. Then how you're going to hear back from self-advocates. So are you going to ask them specifically, were the leadership opportunities we provided meaningful? Is what we're doing, what we intend to ask people with DD will align with the principles in the DD Act. So again, we're just trying to give you guys some ideas about what it is that the reviewers would be looking for when without you having to spend a lot of time describing every element of your process. So, think globally specific, right? We always talk about being globally specific, but you really want to give them an overall view of what it is you're trying to do here. What's next, Amy? Are we to our okay, so we did find a little list of weak and strong signals. Weaker things are just focusing on activities, things like general statements, no reference to benchmarks, only referencing what is required by compliance. If you don't have any information about how you're going to address activities that are performing less than you expected, any type of limitations for people who are participating in your activities. Then we go look at the strong narratives, any things that's focusing on outcomes and impact. Your specific processes and measures, annual targets, performance targets, and your milestones. Conveying a continuous improvement mindset rather than just a compliance mindset, that you're going to use the data to improve, enhance, correct. Do you have a process or a strategy to adjust when things aren't producing as you or your council anticipated? And really how people are meaningfully included in having a say in your projects and activities through the evaluation process. So we think that this section doesn't have to be pages and pages. We do think that these descriptions can, if you went back and you strung all of the strong examples together, you might have something that you could use as a model. But it needs to align with your actual practice. And if you don't have this in actual practice, then that's something for you to consider, or look at your actual practice. You look at what they're looking for and marry the two together. So, what are your thoughts? Kristen Harvey.
Hi, Cheryl. Hi, Amy. Hi, everybody. It's always great to see your faces. I just wanted to really thank you for the conciseness of this presentation. And just to ask, is this going to be on the portal? Because I intend, frankly, to sit my entire staff down and say, hey, look, because I feel like I'm kind of beating them over the head with, hey, when I'm doing the reporting, this is what they're looking for. I just don't think it's really settling in for them. So is a recording going to be available?
It will be. We will put it on our website and we will tell you when it's there. Right, Amy?
Sure.
That is awesome sauce. And I just want to say thank you for everything that you do. And it is greatly appreciated. Could not do my job without you. So thanks.
You are more than welcome, and thank you. Nia, how are you? How's Virginia?
Hi, everyone. We're doing all right. We've got a rainy day today. And I was driving home from another meeting while listening to some of this before I got back. So I apologize if you already touched on this, but I've been curious if there's going to be a logic model requirement still for the next plan. Oh, great.
No.
Okay.
Oh, hey, sorry about that. So not required, but if you love a logic model and you want to hug a logic model every night, high five for you. You can reference a logic model in your work plan. Not your work plan, in your evaluation plan section. What we are unsure of is whether or not you will actually be able to attach or upload a logic model in this format. Remember, the last time it was required, you had a platform that allowed you to attach. Now that this will be a fillable PDF, I'm on the fence, and it's something we can ask Syed next week, but not required. Not
It
required.
likely will appear, like if it appears in the template at all, which there will probably be some reference to it, it will probably appear as recommended but not required. And my best guess is if you were submitting one, you'd probably have to attach it to the email or send a separate email because the file size on these PDFs is going to be large. Or wrap it up in your zip file and attach it to Sarah when you send it in.
Okay, thank you. I'm happy to hear that, mainly because it just felt repetitive and it was just a chore to update it. You know, it gets outdated the moment one activity might change if you're quantifying things, and the outputs and outcomes should already be part of the work planning process. So that's great news. Thank you.
Yeah, we were very excited by it, to tell you the truth, because the work plan appears as kind of a narrative logic model, and then you had to do this pictorial logic model, and so I agree with you. There is logic model information in our TA brief on evaluation plan. So that would be on the itachelp.org website. I'm sorry, did you already put that in the chat, Amy?
I didn't, no.
Oh, okay. It's the evaluation plan TA brief, and it does have the logic model information in there if you so choose to have a logic model. You know, Jen Randall, sometimes people, we've heard the people who like a logic model, they are really actively using it with their council members. And so if that is something that you think would be helpful, because it has a functional use, I wouldn't do one just because it's out there. If you use it, if it helps, if it is part of your council's way that they can, look at progress. I know for us, just to disclose on TA, in the TA contract, ACL developed a logic model that we follow. And in that case, we had a 5-year contract. It's all on one page. And so it is very helpful to be able to go back and look to see what short-term, intermediate, and then are we moving the needle towards ultimate impact? So, if it's helpful, I would say use it. If you find that it is just a homework assignment, it's not worth it. And you have other mechanisms to convey information to your council. Thank you for that question, Nia. I appreciate you reminding us about that. we already did our happy dance when we heard it about a month ago.
I didn't think to mention it again.
Yeah, yes. Early and often, yes.
While we're still chatting, and if you have any questions, please ask. But I'm just going to pop up. We have a 1-question poll, so it's nice and simple for people to answer. We're just going to launch that real quick to give you plenty of time to do that. And then I also just wanted to remind people, or to let you know, in case it's not a reminder to you, it's a big assumption that I'm making. We're going to do 2 evaluation plan TA office hours. specifically as a follow-up to this webinar and to give council staff an opportunity to come and ask additional questions that you might have, or to really just discuss, you're trying to determine what it is you want to say exactly. You need a little help with some wording. We'll sit around for an hour, us and Partnerships for Health staff. I think probably both Michelles will show up, and just help guide in any way that we can for those 2 office hours. So we're doing that March 5th and March 12th, and they'll both be 3 p.m. Eastern start times. I always put the link out the week of, a few days earlier, but just to let you know. And probably that first one, the March 5th one, PFH will probably take some time to go over their guide too.
Right. And ideas for survey fatigue. I'm going to throw that out to the group. Have you all found certain strategies more helpful than others when addressing survey fatigue?
I resort to shameless begging. Reminding people that it is anonymous and that it helps us to get better when they share their honest opinion, and also remind them that we are federally funded and that's public money, and that them as part of the public, it's their responsibility to be sure that public money is spent appropriately. So they are really out there doing, the Lord's work, or your chosen deity's work, by helping us out. And it works out pretty well, but still, some people just aren't going to do it.
Yep. It is a real thing.
It is. And I think, and Lanny, I'm coming to you next. I also think that, it depends. Like there are certain strategies if you're doing some virtual types of activities, or you're using online mechanisms for capturing survey information. And then there's different kinds of strategies for this in-person stuff where it doesn't always have to be a survey. You can do some pretty fun different ways to gather feedback and information from folks, not always tied to, like if someone registered for an event and they've already provided demographic information, then on your survey for measuring increased knowledge or increase in leadership skills, you wouldn't want to re-ask the same questions necessarily but then I realized there could be some skewed information because you'd have to know what the data was for people who actually showed up. Lanny, I'm coming to you.
I was just going to give a few ideas. We have survey fatigue issues too. So we spend time like in our actual council meetings or our committee meetings or other bigger meetings. And like, I'll go in and talk about, hey, this survey is important because X, Y, Z, and we'll give people 15 minutes right then to do it so that, whether it's for getting PPR feedback from a committee or like during a training or something, we'll do it at the end. If it's at the, training, we'll like literally put it on the agenda so that we can get it done. If it's an in-person, paper surveys seem to work for us at least a lot better. We hand those out a little bit before so people can do them. And a lot of times we'll be like, oh yeah, if you hand your paper back in, whether you fill it out or not, we'll give you, a safety kept in place kit or a t-shirt, something like that. But yeah, it definitely is a real issue. And we also offer to do it over the phone with them, or, if we're in person, hey, do you want to, talk to us and I can read you the survey, and, you don't have to do it by hand if you want to. And we also try to space things out too. And if it's like our big reporting season at the end of the year when we're trying to get the rest of our surveys in, we usually won't put out anybody else's surveys either at that time. We'll put them out before or after, but the ones that we need to do, we make sure we're pushing that out and not pushing out other partner surveys at the same time, so people don't get confused and think, oh, I already did that, or make sure we get ours done first. So those are just a few ideas.
Thanks, Lanny. Kristen?
Thanks, Cheryl. And kind of to build on what Lanny said and what Brooke put in the chat, something we found helpful with getting evaluation data back from our big conference each year is we partner with almost like a corporate sponsor. One year it was Chase Bank, who gave us this huge amount of fuzzy fleece blankets. And so we made a thing. Everybody likes a tchotchke and everybody likes a blanket, right? And the conference was in January. So we were like, if you want a blanket, we want your evaluation sheet. So it was a quid pro quo, but it was also leveraging community partnerships, right? Chase Bank, you don't think about, that's not particularly disability specific, but it got them talking about disability issues and it got us swag to give away. Also echo the, launch a poll. If you're doing a Zoom thing, launch it right away. Let people make it as short as possible. And also we have started including QR codes at live events, because some people, especially in the younger generation, they really like a good QR code. And we do it more for accessibility reasons. Someone perhaps who uses speech to text software might not be want to be speaking to fill out a survey in the presence of other people. So that allows them to do it at a later date in the privacy of their own home.
Cool. And Brooke put in, they give away T-shirts paid with non-federal funds, of course. So, yeah, I know lots of people have asked us, can't we give people incentives? Can we give a gift card for people filling out our surveys? Nah, not if you're not with your federal dollar. But you guys are very creative in coming up with different ways to give people some incentives. And of course, you could always give them a free ticket to your next training, right? I don't know. Of course, they're all free, but maybe, who knows? But I do think, everybody struggles with people completing the survey. One thing that, and I know when we do surveys, you'll see what information do we absolutely have to have. We know that you all, have to report by goal, your demographics by goal. When we look at, TA contract, demographics, we can't control demographics. I mean, council staff is council staff, council members are council members. I can't control a demographic. So that's why you don't see us asking for demographics anymore. We used to, but then we went back to the feds and said, how are you using this information? This is stuff that technical assistance as a provider, we don't really control it. I don't determine who you hire. I don't determine who the governor appoints. So I'm kind of at a loss for how this is meaningful data. And so, again, just making sure, and we remind ourselves, are we being nosy or do we need it? I mean, I could ask you all a lot of questions, but I don't need it. I need to know whether or not you have an better understanding after something we did than before, or did it not matter? And that's good information. So if you already knew all this stuff, I'm good with the answer. I had this didn't help me. It didn't hurt me. It just refreshed me. Okay, fine. I mean, I'm good with that too. But it does, I always think going back to what do you actually need? Tedra, Michigan.
I think the issue is when you ask someone that question during the day, you aren't actually measuring the outcome.
Yeah.
I mean, because they just got the information. So in order to figure out what impact that really made in their life, or if they really actually did anything with the information, you would need to do
Go
a
back.
follow-up survey. You would have to go
Yeah.
back to them 6 months after, a year after. So that's what I was asking earlier.
Oh, yeah.
Like that, because that requires, like, you can't really do that like cheaply.
Oh, no, I would
So-
agree.
It's like, it's not, I mean, we can ask it, and we do ask it. It's even when you, even with the outcome measures, you like the data, it's like it's flawed up front
mhm.
because we're getting it that day before we know if
Right.
this really made an impact in your life. And so I think that was just, do they want you to hold back funding so you can do this? Like, if you really want the impact, how serious, I guess, are they about it? Or is it just a matter of get the information that you can and report it, and we're not really?
Well, I think they're are, when you think about projects or subrecipient, it really works well with subrecipients where you can build in the funding for that follow along stuff. I think the challenge comes in when you have staff led projects and you're trying to do this follow along, but I'm thinking there's still an effort that is made to, you attended, I don't want to use partners because they have a long-term survey included in their stuff. But, you came to our, leadership skill development series. What did you actually do with the information? And then trying to figure out, are there other ways you can measure that? Did you see a cohort engage in advocacy at an increased rate in a different way without going back? But I know that one is hard because you're going back and asking people over and over and over again, did you do anything with this? How did you do it? And sometimes it comes down to how you're phrasing the question. Are you phrasing it as an open-ended, tell us what you did with this information? Well, people are going to check out immediately on an open-ended. Did you have increased engagement in personal advocacy, in systems advocacy, in this little checkoff box stuff, right? Where you can say, if someone answers yes, then you've got a little bit different way. Megan Donahue.
Oh, I was just going to say, one of the groups that I provide evaluation support to, we've been working on that. Like, we do a training, and granted, it's 20 people at the training. And then 6 months later, we're launching the long-term follow-up survey. And the first barrier that we had to implementing this was, who has the emails of all of the people? And it turns out nobody was that organized to have all the emails. So that's like, when I came in, I'm like, well, who has it? Nobody did. So then what we built in this last round, and the survey releases tomorrow, is first I've set up identifiers, and I say that goofy. It's 4 or 5 questions that build the identifier. So what I'm doing is, at the end of the event, I'm doing the immediate, did your knowledge change, the week outcomes, right? And then I'm saying, what's the first letter of your first name? What month were you born? What day of the month were you born? And what city were you born in? What's the first, sorry, not what city. What's the first letter of the city you were born in? And stringing those together, I get this identifier that doesn't use any identifying information. And then at the end of the survey, unlinked to the data, I collect their email. So now I have all 16 emails who did my end of event survey, and that's who I'm sending out the 6-month follow-up. I'm expecting a very low return rate, but with a very personal message from the director saying, this is really, really important. because this is what we're trying to really understand if we're hitting the bar on and having that personal appeal in that email to those 25 people. So I don't have a lot of, this is all the strategy through error learning that we put together. And what we're going to be trying, it doesn't help with the fatigue, but it really gets at Tedra's comment about the long-term impact and struggle. And so we still got the immediate one, but trying to do that at 6 months later.
Oh, that sounds great. Yeah, this really is when, you know, and you all know, we just met with David Jones today about impact, but they're not taking their foot off the gas on impact, even on your systems work. And you guys really do plan for impact because you're filling out your annual work plans. What do you expect in the way of an output and an outcome? And then when we roll all of this together, what was your impact? You invested $150,000 on this over the course of a period of time. What did you expect? And then what did you achieve? So anyways, even if it is following a cohort, conducting, I know people say, well, if somebody didn't fill out my survey completely, I have to throw it out. Do you really? We would say, what did they answer? I mean, of course, if somebody submits a survey and didn't answer any question, that might, cause a little bit of a problem. But if they're answering at least one of your questions, then we would encourage you to think of not throwing don't throw the baby out with bathwater. If you have a result, you have a result. It doesn't help with the fatigue of it all. However, I think being upfront with folks, hey, this what you're here today for, we need to follow you. We're going to ask you today. We're going to ask you in 6 months. Prep them. Tell them it's coming. I hope, like Kristen Harvey said, I hope that conveying the importance of, we do things for the public, for the citizens. We're really interested, but we do have to elevate it somewhat. If people know that you need their information and they know that you are interested, you're highly interested in what they have to say. Yeah. Okay. Megan, you've put in, doing, coordination with other people sending out similar surveys. Absolutely. And, ACL highlighted that last year at the TA Institute. During the engagement piece is really, let's try to do as much as we can without asking people over and over and over again. Yeah. Okay, cool. Thanks, Megan. Okay, other thoughts on evaluation? We will be making this stuff available to you on the website. We'll put a note on the listserv when it's ready. It just takes a couple of edits to get the recording up. And if you all have any questions, we're going to do TA state plan office hours next Friday, but the highlight of that is you get to see the template. We're excited for you to see the template. Hang on to your hats. I'm hoping we get to see it before you do, but I think we will. But we're really we're hoping that you will be pleasantly surprised with what will be required. We had some questions today. I specifically asked them about, just some other aspects of what would be included or what came out. We didn't have any firm answers, so we're hoping we'll see it, next week. We'll see it with you for sure. No, you do have to report demographics. Ania's asked, you do have to report demographics for council members and staff, but it is in a format that is checkoff box. It's pull down boxes. So you're not going to have to type it all in like you did the last time. You do have to just pull down the box and say, and click one. And
it's configured differently, so you don't have the long sideways scroll.
Yeah, there's no long scroll. It will all appear in one field. One member will be in one field with all of the stuff right there. So that will ease your bleeding eyes for sure, because that always got us, because by the time I scrolled all the way, I couldn't remember the name of the person I was looking for. And I'm sure that was, and I'm just looking at the information. I'm sure that's was your burden. This is a good hold on to your hats. The idea here is that they wanted to reduce the burden of what you were having to submit in a state plan template. So you all will have everything was less, not more. So there should be less, not more. So in the requirements of what you have to submit. So hopefully you'll be pleased. All right, folks, thanks so much for joining us today. And if you have anything you'd like to follow up with us, Amy and I are available, and we will let you know when all these materials are available to you.